Hello everyone. Project Management Institute, that is PMI, says that by 2027, in the next 5 years, employers will need around 88 million people in project-related roles. Global demand for project managers is ever increasing. The role of project manager is also changing. It is shifting towards a very strategic and leadership position. And add to this, the digital transformation that is happening around us, it has added a new layer of competency in this role. Hi, I'm Sujeet Pathak. I'm product manager at Amoeboids. Amoeboids, we are the Atlassian Platinum Marketplace partner. Through this podcast series, we are bringing together the project managers across the world to share their views, their insights, their best practices on the evolving area of project management. Today, we have with us Alex Ortiz, who is a co-founder at ApeTech LLC. He has been in software industry for more than a decade, and he has worked with many leading global companies in various roles. Alex basically helps engineering teams to deliver large-scale software projects. Hi, Alex. Very warm welcome to you in today's podcast, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and excited to chat about project management and thanks again for inviting me.
Great, that's really great to hear. So let me start with a question here. As we can see, the last decade or so, there has been so many fast-paced digital transformations that are happening around the world in every walk of life. So especially the exponential technologies like AI, ML, or biotech, they are changing the way we work in almost every walk of our life. So being a project manager, being in software industry for a decade now, how do you see that this transformation has impacted your role as a project manager?
Sure. So yes, I've been in the software world for 10 years or over a decade, and definitely seen I've been part of the actual transformation where companies have gone through the transition itself. And so it's interesting to see companies that are just used to like Excel and just a very basic tracking of work,
Right.
and then realizing that you got to innovate quickly, you got to build quickly, because that time to market, there's so much competition, there's so much just opportunity out there, that companies that rely on just older ways of managing a team versus companies that are accelerating very, very quickly and innovating and failing and learning very, very quickly, like that transition has to be there. So over my career, I've been fortunate enough to go through the Boeing company, really, where I worked there for 6 years of my career, and really got to witness firsthand Boeing transition from, again, paper, email, Excel, tracking of just a bunch of emails of going back and forth trying to get statuses, to their first iteration into what is now Azure DevOps, but back then was Team Foundation Server. So I got to see companies kind of slowly learn Agile and figure out what a sprint is. And I've seen so many teams just kind of just stumbling through, and I was there too. I think the first time I learned Agile was in 2013, so like 9 years ago. I remember learning what a story was and what an epic was and things of that nature. And it was just revolutionary, right? It was a different way of thinking of how to approach delivering large scale complex projects, because I like to tell people not all work is created equal, right? There is, between just the deliverables, right? The tasks that every individual has across a team, not all of it's the same. And some work is more complex, some work is a lot easier. And you kind of do need a system to kind of help you keep control and understand the complexities and the level of effort involved. And I love how companies have just kind of embraced this mindset of, we know we build things that are hard, but we also now need to have our teams communicate together. And how do we do that effectively? And just like in Agile based project management, I've been able to see a lot of companies struggle, but ultimately come out on the other side with teams just really being able to communicate more effectively to deliver these complex things. And it's something that I see never stopping because every industry is being impacted by AI, machine learning,
Right.
right? Every industry, like you can't even go to like a McDonald's anymore without having some sort of app or
Right.
mobile ordering or even just a digital kiosk where it's like all based on some piece of software. So every company I do feel at some point is going to have to go through this transformation because they will need to have software in their business to survive.
Right, right. Absolutely. I really resonate with you, what you said. And I like the point that, those companies which try fast, fail fast, learn fast, they actually go ahead than those who are, just engaging the older ways of doing things. And I think agile project management actually, aligns well in this fast changing world where we, actually can deliver the projects in chunks and assess our progress, and accordingly we can reassess or realign our strategies as per the changing environment around us. So I think that's the one thing that I can take away from your response to this question. The next question, Alex, I have is that, as we discuss about the changing environment, so in this current situation, what is the biggest challenge that you have in your role, or any project manager who's experienced enough have in his or her role right now? What is that biggest challenge, and how that one should tackle that challenge, or how you personally plan to overcome that?
Yeah. So my biggest challenge, I think, is dealing with executives. And maybe executives is too focused, but just dealing with executives, but then like the broader world as a whole. I think a lot of companies like Netflix and Facebook and them of the like, or Meta now, right? They embrace this build fast, fail fast, learn type of thing. And I believe agile-based project management very much harnesses that mentality as well, right? Where you do want to do iterative releases and look back, reflect, learn, pivot, adjust, but don't keep repeating the same error over and over and
Right.
over. But when I look at it from a macro perspective, right, I'll start with executives and I'll go to consumers. But like executives, at the end of the day, they just want to see, here's my $100 million that I have. I want to know every penny and how it's being spent.
Right.
While as like agile based project management, it's not linear, right? There's
Mm.
no like if you follow this critical path that you get in traditional waterfall project management, you're not going
Right.
to get the same result, right? There's so many valleys and hills that you're just going through because agile is more of a journey, right? And
Right.
so I feel that that's my biggest challenge where an executive has a specific expectation of how
Okay.
they want to see a linear progression, but agile is like, no, let's do things in a bite-sized way,
Hmm.
but experiment, try it, and but most importantly, reflect and pivot. But I do see a lot of, again, just executives where they're like they just want results and they
Yeah.
want they want a warm fuzzy feeling that things are
Hmm.
going correct. While
Right.
as most of my techniques today don't really always answer that. And then the second part is from the consumers, right? It's
Hmm.
hard to innovate, it's hard to try things, especially when you're a consumer focused or consumer facing company,
Okay.
because you're not gonna be able to please everybody, right? And like
Right.
people are always critiquing when something goes wrong. They're like, well, is this a failure? It's like when Amazon had that Fire Phone, right? The amount of publicity and negative criticism that Amazon got because they're like, why would they build a flop? And then it's just
Right.
the world isn't ready for iterative development, I think, right? People like there it's very very black and white where it's like it either works or it doesn't work and they don't like the stuff in between, but you
Yeah.
can't learn unless you release the stuff in between, right? You can't make,
Okay.
we're not all going to do like one hit wonders, right? We're not like all always going to be so lucky to just like make a hit every time, right? It's an iterative approach, and I don't think a lot of people appreciate that iterativeness that happens behind the scenes. But today, you kind of have to expose your stuff to the world to get that feedback. It's just there's a lot of chatter when you're getting that feedback back. So those are the two big challenges that I see with like where we're going just as an industry, and the role that like consumers and executives play with influencing the development of the products that we're putting together.
Right. That's quite an interesting take. Uh, in traditional format, like what we generally learn about project management, they always say that you have initiation stage and then you have a planning stage and then actually you go for the execution, right? So many organizations I have seen that they spend too much time in planning the things and rather than executing things. So I think what you mentioned about that kind of executing, failing, trying fast and failing fast, actually breaks that traditional way of project management. Having said that, many organizations are still following those old processes, and they are in the transition phase, maybe to go towards more agile ways of doing things. Uh, what according to you are key pitfalls that one should avoid while starting any new projects, so that you don't face major obstacles when you actually start executing things?
Yeah, so I try to stick with facts and data, right? So some of the things that the technique that I mainly use is change is hard, change is scary. And if you don't understand it, that you're usually going to resist it quite a bit. So what I try to do as a project manager is I am being just as transparent as possible. But for every decision that me and my team are doing, every pivot that we're doing, I'm trying to get all the facts and data from my team so that I can present, so I can give the logic, the reasoning for the pivots, the reasoning for why we need to do one or B or A or B or C, right? Because I think the challenge with moving away from the traditional, right, is because the traditional is like the very line of sight. You have the visibility and you have an expectation. The problem is that line of sight and that expectation doesn't accommodate for life. It doesn't accommodate for the challenges that life throws at every project, right? Because I have never seen like a in my 12 years of working, right? I've never seen a project go to plan, right? There's always something that happens. And unfortunately, those plans just don't allow for creative, critical thinking to navigate through those muddy waters. And so what I try to do is, because I already know that my plans are going to be a lot more agile, right? Where we embrace the uncertainty, is I try to give people the warm, fuzzy feeling by at least giving them as much data into the reasoning and the thinking process, so that they can at least digest it and go, okay, well, these people aren't just like pulling things out of the air and just trying. We're like trying, but there's a method to the madness, right? And so usually I find that when I present that information, when I give them that logic, so that they can see that we're not just, let's just go that way or that way. Right? I tend to show them like, look, I establish a North Star, and then we're working towards that North Star. There's going to be some hills and valleys. We'll figure it out as we're going. But here's all the data that we're collecting along the way. And then I'm presenting them to the decision makers, right? Because the people that are ultimately that control the purse are the ones that usually mandate how things go or don't go. So they're the ones I'm trying to convince.
Yes, perfect. Like, I also have faced such situation that you mentioned, that you just tend to do things on your gut feeling sometimes, and it's not backed by the data, real life data, and then it actually turns out to be a disaster sometimes at the end of the day. So while we are on this topic, so another question that comes to my mind is that we often have some goals in our mind. We have some stated goals as well in our projects, which we want to achieve, maybe quarterly goals or yearly goals. And then accordingly, we plan our processes. And then once we start executing, as you mentioned, in real life, there are some obstacles, some unforeseen things. And so you have to maneuver around that. You can't just have a linear way of doing things. But having said that, there is also a goal. Sometimes when we actually start executing, we discover some more things, like in terms of software. Like suppose we have planned for certain set of features and we're going to develop them. And then while we are actually executing it, we may feel that some new features that never came to your mind when we were in planning stage. And now you see that you can also do these things. And there is sometimes a temptation that to include or to broaden the scope of the goals that we had set for ourselves. So that's another risk that I have seen many organizations fall prey to, and then they end up, creeping their scope altogether, and then they just lost their way towards that particular goal. So how do you ensure that, what are the best practices to prevent such scope creep and to reach your goals? Maybe, of course, there might be some obstacles you can maneuver around that, but the end goal, that broader goal that you have set for yourself, should be achieved.
Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind with that question. I had a chief engineer when I worked at Northrop Grumman. She had this, I'm sure she got it from somewhere else, but she said, you never go to war without a plan. Even if the plan changes the second you touch the battlefield, you have to have like some direction, right? And so that I wanted to just, when you mentioned that, I was like, I always approach every software project that I'm a part of. We always have a plan, right? We always have some North Star, but I already know and I already understand and I appreciate that the second we get that ball rolling, it's not going to go the way we planned it, right? So I think coming in, not being blind to that helps, right? Because a lot of people are blind to that. A lot of people are like, here's a plan, why isn't it working? And they're stubborn, right? They just want that plan to work. And so I think me coming in already understanding and appreciating that it's going to plan and already anticipating it to do my new decision making off of that assumption, it works wonders for me. Second, and I think you were asking me like, so how do you deal with like the scope creep and stuff, right? And this is I teach a class, I teach Jira for like up and coming Scrum masters and things of that nature. And one of the things that I like to tell them is it's okay to be a project manager without a technical background. It's okay to be like a Scrum master without knowing software. But I tell them that you won't appreciate your job and you won't excel at your job until you can appreciate the beast that is software. Because software is not like building a bridge. Software is not like building a building, right? All those things have a predictability that you can control, right? You can manage a lot of variables into building a building or a boat or a car or pretty much anything, right? But when you're with software, it's unpredictable, right? And so when you have an appreciation for software and you can understand and digest that software is never done. It's an infinite game, right? There is no start and end date with software. You could forever and ever, I mean, look at Netflix, right? There is no version 1 of Netflix. It's just Netflix, right? It's just like every day you get new movies, you get new features, you get new this bells and whistles, right? So you're never going to finish a product. And I think when you can embrace that, right? And I think a lot of project managers typically just come from the background of like, there's some other, they have a degree or they come from a different domain, right? But they don't really understand how software can work, right? Because what I scope creep doesn't scare me, right? Because I can understand the complexity of software, and my job, my duty is to hone the team back in, get them focused and go, okay, we clearly have an infinite game, but we have a finite number of resources, right? We only have so many days in the schedule, so much budget and allocated, right? And so everybody is going to be like kids in a candy store, right? Where everybody's just like, ooh, I want that. And my job is sometimes to be that cop, right? To be that enforcer of, hey, we need to set this up in milestones, right? So I'm a big proponent of like MVPs and of just like bigger, I shouldn't say big, but bigger iterative releases where we're like, I understand you want me to boil the ocean, right? I understand that and I appreciate that, but I can't boil the ocean, right? We're gonna have to like take cups out of that ocean, and here's the first gallon of water, here's another gallon of water, and I give it to them in gallons, right? Because it's just, you got to tame it all back in. But again, because I understand that research-based portion of software, I don't get frustrated. I see a lot of other project managers that don't usually come from a software background. They'll just get frustrated because they're like, what do you mean you're moving the goal line? What do you mean you're moving the finish? And I'm like, that finish line was never there, right? It's an imaginary finish line. And because you feel like it's being moved, that's why you're getting frustrated. That's why there's like these conflicts, internal conflicts, team conflicts, and then you lose the team, right? At that point, you've lost it, right? You have to keep everybody focused, and because I understand that, right, and I can appreciate the fact that that goal line is a sand, it's literally a line in the sand that could be
Right.
moved,
Yeah.
right? My job is to kind of put some stakes,
Mm.
but appreciate and understand and communicate that we're going to be doing stakes for a while, right? There's just, you're not gonna be able to get everything. So that's kind of my thought process there. It's the reception is usually hit or miss, right? Again, it depends on the executive team, that my leadership team. Some leadership teams that are software based, they'll appreciate it, right? Because they've been through that. They
Right.
understand that complexity. But other ones that are like econ majors, or they're like just a very numbers type of leader, they're the ones that struggle the most, right? Because they're like, again, they want a clear critical path, and they're like, how come I can build a bridge and know all my inputs and outputs? I mean, because software's not a bridge.
Oh,
So,
that's great way. That's really insightful. That what you explained right now about the scope creep, and it's a whole new take from your side. I think I would read a lot of content on this, seen many videos, but I think that's a unique way to look at it. I really appreciate uh, the way you are looking at it. Like you mentioned about a team, like you being a project manager, you have to enforce certain things within your team. You have to. So that thing that comes to my mind is as a project manager or any manager for that matter, you have to deal with many stakeholders, whether it is internally or even external. You have many stakeholders to work with, and you have to be in touch with them all the day, communicate them through various channels. Not all the stakeholders are on the same platform when it comes to the communication part. So stakeholder management and stakeholder communication, that's another area that the manager or a project manager has to look into. So what are your best practices around this? Like what is the approach that you generally you take? What are the various channels of communication that you use to manage stakeholder communication?
yeah, I feel like you're interviewing me for a position at your company. Like, I feel like this is usually one of those, like when you're going for like a technical
Right,
project
right.
manager, that's a traditional question. Um, so I have a couple different techniques, right? So I value transparency to the max. It sometimes gets me in trouble.
Mhm.
I have worked with a lot of managers where they're like, they don't want to expose certain aspects. And
Mhm.
I don't understand why, right? Like, I feel that when I expose our problems, right? And I'm doing it in a careful way, right? Because the last thing I want to do is like go chicken little, right? I don't want to say, the sky's falling, or maybe crying wolf is a more familiar thing where you lie, you make people believe you have a problem, but you don't really have a problem. So I don't do that. But what I do is when I do have a problem in the horizon, I do like to give a heads up, right? So that people are aware. And so some of the techniques that I use is I leverage Confluence and like Jira dashboards a lot extensively in order to anybody that's in the world of Atlassian within the companies that I work with, that they can see the data live, right? So that I'm not putting reports, I'm not creating PowerPoints. I'm finding critical metrics that are important, and they vary from company to company and how we're measuring success, right? So some companies want to know like the number of bugs, other companies want to know their open and close rates and stuff like that. So it just varies from company to company. But at the end of the day, the technique's similar, where I'm putting those metrics up on dashboards within Jira so that folks there can see it, right? And then from other like just like VPs or like executives, the C-suite and stuff like that, they don't usually go into the weeds there. But
Right.
what I do have and what I do usually host are like just milestone meetings, right? Where I'll present all the data within the wonderful world of Jira and show
Mhm.
them just off of that single source of truth, right? Because what I try to avoid at all costs is having data in multiple places, because then they can get out of sync. And now you're telling different stories. So I try to control the narrative as much as possible by keeping everything within the world of Jira, since everything's being built into Jira anyways already, right? And so most of my teams are going to have their Git repository integrated with Jira. They're going to have their continuous integration built integrated to Jira. So I can see all the stuff in there already. And I'm not relying on again, PowerPoints or emails or just other methods of communication. All my stakeholder communication I try to keep everything as Jira as the basis, and then I open Jira up, right? I try to avoid taking screenshots and stuff like that. So whenever I need to communicate to stakeholders, it's just like here's Jira and here's the live data, and there's nothing snapshot about it. Right?
Okay.
This is as raw as it gets. And and then again, kind of trying to tell the narrative and the story through the use of dashboards and like we use custom charts quite a bit for that. Couple of other plugins that we just leverage. Advanced roadmaps is also most of my clients are like premium, right? So using advanced roadmaps to kind of show the warm feeling of here's the whole plan, here's the whole release, here's how we're going, those kind of things. But I'm usually in the tool as much as
Okay.
possible.
I really liked your approach. Being transparent is always helps, and when it comes to the stakeholder communication, especially when we have a large set of stakeholders around us. Fortunately enough, at Amoeboids, as I explained, we are the Atlassian marketplace partners. So we have an app called Automated Release Notes, which is built for the software companies who use Jira for their releases, and we actually trying to solve two solutions here through ARN. What we are doing is that we are trying to make it easier and for to draft release notes in various formats for different stakeholders by pulling data from the Jira tickets. And then the second problem that we are trying to solve is automating the distribution of those release notes through various channels. So you can create release notes templates, ready to use release note templates in whether it is in an email or PDF or Confluence. You can have n number of templates ready with you. And once you are done with the release, you can just automate and trigger those templates to get distributed to the related stakeholders. So while we are on this topic of stakeholder communication, that there is a one way that we are trying to solve for the project managers who look into the software releases, even not just the releases, but the tool also helps to generate any kind of a report based on your Jira tickets data and distribute it in an automated way. So that's again, like you mentioned, the transparency can be maintained. At the same time, you don't have to spend too much time preparing those reports and then sending it to various stakeholders. So that automation part is also there. So that's another area that I just wanted to highlight. While I just spoke about the tool that we have developed, ARF. Being in this industry or being in this project management space, is there any particular tool which is your favorite, which you always carry in your toolbox, no matter what project you are working in? So is there any particular tool, maybe related to your work or your personal level, like task management and all this time management stuff?
It almost sounds cliche because I don't know if your audience looks into me, but Jira as a whole, right? Just I can't stress how much I rely on Jira day in and day out for all aspects of my life, right? Like not and like I like that you mentioned like just personal as well, right? Because for my YouTube channel that I've been growing, there's a lot of coordination, right? There's a lot of handoffs between me, my wife has helped, like she does a lot of the editing, and I was building a small team that's remote, and we're like there's a lot of coordinations that have to happen, and so I'm relying on Jira to have the proper columns, to have the proper statuses, to be able to have this weekly huddle where we're like, okay, what's the priority for the week type of thing. For at home, for just with the kids, with chores, using Jira so that my kids they all have like their free account type of thing, and they all get their assigning stuff, and they're able to look at like what's assigned to them and what day it is and what they should be working on, and those kind of things, like from like a homework tracking perspective, from a like chores perspective. We have like a weekly sprint, if you will, within our family where we're like, okay, what are the priorities for the week? So we'll get together like on Sundays and we'll plan out like the next 5 days so that everybody's kind of clear on expectations. So I just, the number of applications that I have for this Jira tool, if you haven't used it, I can't push it enough because Jira is just amazing, right? It helps. Like there's like things like Trello, right? Where like a lot of people start with Trello because it's a very basic, take a sticky note, like my to-do list, and put it on there, which is great when you're like a team of one. But the second that you need to start coordinating, you need to have like these grounding weekly or sprint every 2 weeks meetings where it's not enough to just have a tool that you can visualize stuff. right? And so there's other tools out there that'll help you like do like task management, right? But unless you're doing, I personally believe, unless you're doing like an agile based task management where you are doing this iteratively, where you are having like a sprint planning meeting, regardless of what the application is, like you need to be communicating in verbally with team members to level set expectations and then leverage the tools to deliver that. Because if you just rely on tools and don't communicate like verbally, people are going to go look at a tool and you can't imagine how many assumptions are going to be made, right? And so it's always, I always find that useful to leverage a tool, but also leverage human interaction to make sure that that tool is kind of doing its purpose. Because otherwise you're just going to get just too much reliance, over reliance on the tool. It's still not going to yield the results that you're looking for. But Jira is my answer, right? It's I'm in Jira for almost every aspect of my life here.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Like, so we generally relate Jira with the software projects only, but you are actually using it for your day-to-day work, your personal work as well, your family. So that's a interesting take on it again. And I think you are perfect brand ambassador for Atlassian as far as Jira is concerned.
They try to hire me, but they said that I couldn't do anything outside of whatever they allowed. I was like, oh no, so just for disclosure, right? Like I do Jira and I'm hyper focused on Jira, but over the next months and years, I do plan on branching out, right? Like I'm just right now as I'm trying to grow my audience and kind of grow into my niche. Jira is just kind of what I focus on because it's what I've been doing for the last 5.5 years, and I'm really, really good at Jira.
Right.
But I do plan on like branching out. So first I'm going to branch out to like the rest of Atlassian, where it's just like Confluence and Bitbucket and things like that. But in 2023, I do see myself going to like Azure DevOps and maybe bringing in like Trello and Monday.com and like starting and then expanding to like GitHub and just things in the entire software development lifecycle, right? So while Jira is paying my bills right now, I do see a life beyond just Atlassian. But right now it's just Team Atlassian for forever until I'm ready to grow more.
Great. Alex, you have been this, like we mentioned, for a decade now. So you must have worked on many projects, right? And many organizations that you work with in various capacities. So any particular favorite projects that that you work and you really learn a lot in that particular project that you can share your experience with us?
Sure. So one of my favorite projects that I work on right now is I help a team build a little robot. And this little robot is for social interaction for kids that are like autistic, kids with like ADD, just kids that need that extra layer of help. And this robot is really designed to kind of be like a partner, right? A special friend. And I think out of everything that I worked on over my career, because I've built like a very big defense, right? So military aircraft, reconnaissance, right? Like just very much advanced military, which is awesome.
Right.
And then I built autonomous floor cleaners where like I keep all the Walmarts of the world clean and all the different stores of the world like are clean because of the robots that I've worked on. But out of everything, I think working on this little, it's called Moxie, this little robot here that is really designed to really help kids that need that extra companion, that aren't necessarily ready for the world, because the world is a very scary place, especially with a kid with special needs. Right. And I think that of all the work again that I've done, where because I understand like the complexities, right? Like the military aircraft that I built save millions of lives or save hundreds of millions of lives, right? But even those amazing as those are, right? Building fighter jets and reconnaissance aircraft and things like that, is like being able to help the kids is really like I think one of my proudest projects that I work on, and just being able to again be a part of this. As even though I'm a small participant in all this, right? I just help the team kind of coach them, guide them through the agile process, and kind of help them make the right decisions. But getting to see all the engineers, the way they come together to figure out how do we make this product better? How do we improve it? How do we find the pain points that kids in the spectrum are going through, and how do we augment it with technology so that they can have a better perspective in life? I think
Right.
it's probably one of my favorite projects that I work on right now.
Yeah, that's quite inspiring actually. This reminds me of my previous organization where I was working in edutech, where we were working on spreading digital literacy to the remotest places of the country here in India. And I used to work with a lot of school children for that project, and I used to interact with them. And it always gives a lot of satisfaction to you. When we work for children, we build for children because they are, especially the new generation. They are born in such a changing world. That speed of change is so much that they know you just have to cope with the competition around and the changing environment around. And when it comes to the children with special needs, then it adds another layer of challenges that we have. So that's quite inspiring again, what you spoke about that robot, and the very interesting name as well. So Alex, coming to the end, my last question to you will be like, as we discussed earlier, like the world is changing around us continuously, and we have to learn new skills, learn new tools constantly. Sometimes this changing world, we also have to unlearn older skills and learn new things. So how do you continue to learn in order to stay top of your things, like you started a YouTube channel recently, right? So YouTube is maybe a new thing for you, how to increase the reach of YouTube. So how do you keep learning new things?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that you bring up that question. Um, I I have suffered with imposter syndrome basically my entire career, where it's just like I don't feel like I'm good enough. I feel like I always shied away from taking on new opportunities or new challenges because anything that was unknown to me, something that I didn't already have a skill, like just seemed super scary to me, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. When I quit my job last year, and I kind of went to figure life out by my own, I started in cybersecurity, but as soon as I was in that world of cybersecurity, they were asking me to do things that are like I'm like I don't know how to do. So I was like, oh no, this is not what I want to do. So then I was like, you know what? Let me go do Jira or Atlassian, because I've been doing Jira at that point for like 4.5 years or something like that. And I was like, I feel pretty comfortable. I know how to use Jira really well. And so I went, and then again immediately I was hit with like, wow, like these are some hard things I didn't even know you could do in this world, right? But I didn't run this time. Instead I embraced it, and I spend to this day I spend 12 hours a day in Jira or Atlassian tools, and
Okay.
I just spend learning them. And the best way that I learn is twofold. One, I take on work from like paid clients that is hard, right? And they're like, here's a problem. I'm like, I have no idea how to fix it, but you're gonna essentially pay me to learn how to do it, right? Because I know Jira really, really well. So I'm like, I'm just finding those little deltas. But the second way, and the way that I'm trying to embrace now fully, is I'm just doing Atlassian community questions. So Atlassian has a community website where people just go and ask all their Jira problems. And this really, really grounds me, because today I don't have a fear of Jira, right? Clients ask me things that I don't know how to do. I know it's going to take me like 20 minutes to figure it out, and I'm gonna solve it because I'm really, really comfortable with my Jira skills. But then I go to the Atlassian community website and I look at the questions and the problems that people have, and it's very humbling. It's very grounding to go like, shoot, do I even know what Jira is? And so I go there, right? I expose myself, and what I'm doing, and just a little shameless plug, right? Every Tuesday for the next 12 weeks, I'm actually going to be doing a live stream on my YouTube channel where I'm going to be just taking unscripted community questions, whether it's through the chat or through the Facebook groups or Reddit groups or just the Atlassian website itself. And I'm just going to go and answer questions, right? And I'm hoping that I find a lot of questions that I don't know the answers to, that I try to reproduce so I'm learning. and then answer it so that I'm also doing the contribution to the community, but then I'm also learning it because I'm being exposed to so many different things. Because the best thing about Jira is the worst thing about Jira is that it's infinitely customizable and it has an
Right.
infinite number of applications to it. So I'll never be able to know Jira 100%, but this is the way that I tend to focus on like learning new things is by intentionally in a controlled environment, exposing myself, but learning and then just sharing with the community.
Right, right. That's again an interesting take. Like I kind of reminded of a quote that my previous manager used to say. Whenever there is a challenge, we used to go to him, and then he always used to say that go where the action is. So that's the thing that actually you are following. You are going to the community and exposing yourself for to their questions so that you can also learn and you get the idea like where you stand and what are new things that you need to learn. So that's again a good thing, like not just for the Jira or any particular tool, but a life as is like that, and you can follow that strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a bachelor's and a master's, and so I have a lot of education under my belt.
Hmm.
I had one I had one lecturer. He wasn't even a professor. He was a computer technician for the engineering department.
Oh,
And my instructor didn't show up. He went on maternity leave, paternity leave, and he didn't tell anybody. And here we are, a group of students sitting in class, and there's no instructor. The department chair scrambling. He went and pulled that tech and said,
oh,
here's the book, go teach the class. And I learned nothing about whatever that class was about, but that one instructor taught me this one thing that I live by almost every single day. And he told us, because we always had questions, right? We were reading the book with him and we had no idea what we were learning.
hmm.
And we would ask him because he was our instructor, right? He's the person that gets paid to know the answer. And he didn't know the answer. And so his answer to us for almost every question was, you're an engineer, go figure it out. And so I use that almost every single day. So all of my education can be summed up to just that statement. That is the most valuable thing that I learned in university, which was I'm an
Hmm.
engineer and I just go figure it out, right? Like no, I can't rely on anybody to solve my problems. My
Hmm.
curiosity has to go solve it for me.
Oh, that's amazing. I think that's quite interesting experience. And on that, I think thank you so much, Alex, for sharing these really, really valuable insights with us. And I'm sure listeners have a lot of takeaways from this conversation. Thank you again for your time. And I hope everyone you loved our conversation. We're going to bring more such sessions with many project managers around the world. So for such content, follow Amoeboids on our LinkedIn page, on our YouTube channels. You can also visit our website, amoeboids.com, for more details. So Alex, again, coming back to you, thank you so much for your time, and any closing remarks. How did you feel about this?
Oh, thank you very much. I enjoyed it. And I'll do a shameless plug too. Make sure you any Jira stuff, just let me know. I got a YouTube channel, a tech tutorial. That's where people can find me. And anybody that wants to are curious about Jira or learning more about Jira, I am doing beginners to advanced through the whole 9 yards. So got something for everybody.